This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode. Boom. We are back, man. The Daily Leader Podcast is back. Another fantastic guest today that I'm excited to get to know more. Brad will introduce him in just a minute. And of course, if you are a new listener to the Daily Leader Podcast, we're so grateful that you're here. If you're an old listener, we're grateful that you're back. And either way, like, subscribe, whatever it is on your platform that you need to do. Go out, get the Daily Leader tattoo. We're so grateful for all of you that have that already and follow us. With that is enough of me talking. But Bradley, I am excited, man.
Me too.
Guest friend of yours. Would you take a minute and introduce Alex to our listeners?
I sure will, guys. We've got Alex Seale on the podcast with us today, and we're super excited to have him. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a Chick-fil-A operating partner and serves at a local restaurant, grinding it out day in and day out in operations, leading the team there. But more than that, he's the founder of the Pivot Experience, where he does business and leadership coaching, as well as speaking. And he's having a huge impact on people. So we wanted to bring Alex because we have been getting to know each other over the last couple months and following one another on social media. And I had the opportunity to be a guest on the Pivot Experience. And after getting to know Alex through that opportunity, I thought, man, we have to have him here on the Daily Leader so that our audience can get some exposure to him and all of his thoughts and ideas on leadership. So, man, Alex, welcome to the show. That was a little introduction, but please, man, tell us your story. Give our listeners an idea of kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Thank you guys so much, guys, for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the platform. My name is Alex. I've worked for the world's most caring company, Chick-fil-A, for the past 22 years. Started when I was 14 years old, wiping tables on Saturdays, making $5.15 an hour, to now having the blessing of an opportunity to be a multi-restaurant operating partner. My operator has been an operator for over 40 years now. And so I've had a great opportunity to be able to just be under the leadership of somebody who knew Truett firsthand, has amazing stories with Truett, and just really understand. And Truett Cathy, everybody knows. If you don't know, that is the founder of Chick-fil-A. But I've had the unique opportunity from learning from a company that all they want to pursue is excellence. A lot of what I do, a lot of who I am, is built off of that premise. I came across a quote from Truett several years ago, actually, that says, perfection is the expectation, but he'll tolerate excellence. And so that's something I've kind of always just taken with me and kind of try to weave that into everything that I do. I've been married to my beautiful wife now almost 13 years. We have 3 children, ages. My oldest just turned 15, 7, and 3. So if you know anything, if you got a teenager and you got a young 7-year-old and almost a toddler, we're all over the place when it comes down to what parenting looks like for us. But we wouldn't have it any other way. We love our family, the challenges, the good moments, the bad moments. It all makes it all makes up our tapestry as a family. And I'll fast forward a little bit. In 2015, my wife and I opened a brick and mortar clothing store. It was mainly for her, something that she was interested in, something that she was passionate in. She had the interest and passion. I had kind of the business acumen to do the administrative side of things. And we were doing that for a while. And was starting to get a lot of questions from other people in our community about how do you go about starting a business? How do you go about, having the courage, not only the courage and the passion, but also just the literal know-how. And that was really the genesis of what we now know as the Pivot Experience, leadership coaching and development company. This company in its current form has gone through a few iterations, but here we are with our company having a podcasting component along with us doing client work and leadership development, mostly for restaurants, but we're not exclusive to restaurants. But a lot of our business is in the Chick-fil-A category. We do some work with some PJ Coffees of New Orleans, and we have a few other clients that we like to work with. And I've always just, I get the question all the time. I've been with Chick-fil-A for 2 decades, and why aren't you an operator? And I love the idea of being an operator. I love the prospect of it. Obviously, we know it's a very profitable profession to be in. However, I just always thought that I wanted to explore what my influence could be beyond just that one deal. I'm from what I understand, you guys are very familiar with the Chick-fil-A proposition that they have in terms of being an operator, and that could be limiting at times in terms of what you can do outside of the framework of being an operator. And in my, I think I'm fairly young. I just wanted to continue to explore what my entrepreneurial gifts were outside of that constraint. And so that's kind of how the pivot experience came about. I enjoy what I do. I have 3 other coaches that I work with, and we all work for Chick-fil-A. And we have over 50 years of combined organizational experience with Chick-fil-A that we would like to share with as many people that would allow us to to share it with them. So that's the skinny on me.
Man, that's good
Love it.
stuff, brother. That's good stuff,
Yep.
man. I love that. I love that.
Thank
I
you.
love that you're like, hey, here's the constraints. So let me go explore outside of them before I commit to that, which I think is fantastic. That's really cool. The operator, being an operator, as we all know, can be, fantastic. It's a wonderful opportunity. And you are right. It is a little bit limiting, especially if you have that entrepreneurial spirit. So I love hearing your story of how you, in a way, circumvented that because you would be one heck of a candidate, man. You got all the experience. You can come back to that at any point, and hopefully Chick-fil-A would be smart enough to go, all right, let's dub this guy an operator, man. Let's get him rocking and rolling. So that's great. Hey, tell us something unique about Alex that we may not know. What's like a fun fact?
Fun
Yeah,
fact.
I'm putting you on the spot here.
Fun fact. Well, I don't know if this is a fun fact, but I get this all the time. I don't think it's nothing wildly unique, but I work at Chick-fil-A and I don't eat condiments at all. A lot of people are like, "What? You don't eat ketchup? You don't eat mayo?" No, I don't. I don't deal with any of that, despite what it looks like on camera. I have a very limited palette of things that I enjoy eating. And I think it works out for my wife because she's not under the pressure of having to deliver like various items throughout the week. I could eat this almost the same thing every day. Now my rest of my family, they all eat different things, but I'm pretty a picky eater. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for per
No, that's
se.
great, man.
And
Yeah, you
I'm a bit of a car enthusiast too. I've got a few projects that I'm working on right now from an automotive standpoint. I just got, and then I don't want to be too specific, but I just bought like a 1992 Chevy 1500, and it's a manual. So this is the first
that's
manual
fun.
transmission that I've
Yes.
ever driven. So I taught myself how to drive it, and
Let's go.
so it's I like that. So that's fun.
Heck yeah,
Yeah.
I
man.
love it.
I miss driving a stick. Well, good for you. You have saved yourself a lot of Chick-fil-A sauce over the years, man. You just
More for
Contribute
me.
contributing to that
yeah.
food. That food cost is going good. Yep.
Yeah, my wife is the opposite. She's like, if there isn't a buttload of sauce, I'm not eating it. And I'm like, well, all right, that's fine. But I'd be more in your camp, man. That's great.
Yes, sir.
Well, Alex, all right, cool, man. So here's what we're gonna do next. We like to play a game on this podcast, a game that puts you in kind of a rock and a hard place situation, but hopefully the fruit of that is just a neat conversation that we're gonna have. So we explore on this podcast the daily leadership, and Brad and I have talked about since episode 1 just kind of the different tensions that leaders go through all the time, right? Some of those choices that we make may be black or white. A lot of them are not, and they live in the gray, and we're always having kind of this push pull. So, name of the game, slow burn. Like I think we told you before, it was supposed to be rapid fire. It kind of is, it's kind of not. People make fun of us, so we called it the slow burn because we think we're funny, but our wives don't. And this is probably another one of those jokes. It doesn't land. Ouch. But it is a good game. And so we're going to give you two kind of like probably options that you would choose both. And we're going to say, hey, push comes to shove. If you had to choose between option A, option B, which one would you choose? And give us your 15-second, 30-second elevator pitch on why. Does that sound fair? We do that?
Fair enough.
All right, cool. Let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to give you your first one. Being or doing? Which one is more important? Being or doing?
You're absolutely right. Both of these should be a yes, but I'll have to roll with doing, and here's why. I feel like even though you can be as prepared as possible internally, like you can study, you can think that you have everything that you need from the being standpoint to execute something, a lot of times you really don't know what can happen until you do it. And so I feel
Mm,
like, there's a phrase, we're going to fail forward, and you really
mm.
don't know what you're capable of doing until you actually do it. People spend hours of time going to college. They spend, a lot of time just getting themselves prepared for certain things, but you really don't know what's going on till the rubber hits the road. So I'm going to go with doing is the supreme. It's like the 1A, 1B. I give doing the
Yeah.
1A on that.
I like it. I like it, man. That's a great answer. That's a great answer. I appreciate that take. Let's try this. People or tasks?
People. This one's a little bit easier than the last one. Um, I can have a task list that's 100 items long, but if there's nobody to the left or the right of me to do it, then what's the
Mm,
use? I think there's a phrase, "We're better together." And when you get in alignment with other people to buy into whatever your vision, your mission is, the task then themselves will take care of themselves, in my opinion. So I think that you have to prioritize people over product. You have to prioritize people over task. And then at that point, you can do whatever it is that you need to do. So I'm going to pick people on that one.
love it, man. Chick-fil-A guy through and through, right? People before profits, man. Let's go.
Yes,
All right.
sir.
This one may fall a little bit in the same camp, but slightly different. All right, relationships or results?
So by nature, I'm results driven. However, I have to realize and acknowledge that relationships matter. Relationships can be more important than the results. If you with the right relationships can open doors maybe faster than some results can. And
Mm,
so I would probably lean towards relationships in this regard because, and then really at the end of the day, and this might be a longer answer than what you bargained for, but I read a book called Principles by Ray Dalio a few
mm,
years ago, and he talks about the most important component of any employment is the sabbatical, right? This time that you have away from the job, the time that you, and not literally going out into the mountains for 2 months, but just that those little bits of the moments that you have with your team that's not focused on work, but focused on each other and focused on the betterment of each other's lives. It's more important than the results that we're generating. If we have connectivity amongst each other, the results will happen because people will want to be where they're at because they have great relationships with the people that they're working with.
love that, man. Those
That's good.
those are some pretty good. You think he passes? Does he pass round A? I got
So
him coming
far,
in.
round A,
Yeah,
yeah,
347 and a half points. That's what I got.
yep.
Nobody understands our scale, and neither do we, but you got a lot of points, man. Good work. Good work. We'll keep
Appreciate
going.
it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to flip over to the B side here, and we're going to see how he does on this
Oof.
round. So,
B can be
first,
tough.
this isn't going to get easier for you, Alex. So, first of all, here we've got values or vision. What's more
This one's
important in leadership?
this one's extremely hard, and I think for me, I'm going to speak from, man. This one's tough, but I would have to say vision. And it's really hard for me to say vision over values, but I would have to say vision. I guess particularly in the posture that I'm in the pivot experience and at Chick-fil-A, we have to be able to come back to something that's going to keep us aligned. And really, the vision is the foundation in which the values probably sit on when you're talking about from an organizational standpoint, right? And so I would have to say vision because that is charting where we're going. That is the lighthouse in which the ship is going to navigate towards. And so for me, I guess, again, in my position for these different levels of employment and ownership that I have, I would say vision would be top on my list. I would collaborate with others to establish what values that we would like to have. But as far as the vision of a company or organization, I believe that comes from the top. And then if I sit at the top, then that's going to be one of my core responsibilities to ensure that the decisions that are made do not go against what the vision is and where we're trying to go.
Mm.
So that was tough of an answer to forego values, but I would say vision.
No, that's good. Quick little interjection here. Can you tell us how many people report up to you in your organization?
Chick-fil-A 240, 250.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that most people don't realize how large those restaurants get from a headcount standpoint. And granted, you wouldn't thinking about, a 3,000 square foot box, right? Retail restaurant. Most quick service restaurants do not, grow a team that large. But because of the volumes, right, that Chick-fil-A restaurants see, those teams have to, accommodate that kind of sales volume by simply just throwing a massive amount of labor. And I think it's interesting, Alex, to hear someone from your vantage point that's in such a values driven organization, such a people centric customer service hospitality organization answer with vision. And that tells us something interesting and it makes me really curious. So I just love the way that you approach that.
Like I said, it was for me to answer the question again. I know it's one or the other, and I had to look at it from, I guess, where I sit organizationally. It's okay. We all play a role in values. All 241 of us, including me, play a role in executing and uplifting the values. But as far as developing and casting vision, that number gets significantly smaller in terms of the people who, now we all should play a role in casting vision, but in terms of like where does the meat of the vision come from, I believe that's a lot of where my focus is from an employment standpoint. So that's
Yeah.
why I answered it that way.
No,
So
it's great answer, man. That's a great answer. And Brad's right. First time I went to a Chick-fil-A restaurant, met with Brad, and he said, "You know how many people are on shift?" And I said, "No." He's like, 36. I'm like, there's no way that you have a restaurant with 36 people on shift right now. And yeah, there's a ton more going on, man. So we appreciate you weighing in on how you process that and think through that at an organizational level. So, all right, enough of me. I got to shut up. Brad,
Good
keep playing our game.
goodness or greatness?
greatness. Um, Personally, I'm a huge fan, and I don't know where this lands with y'all. Michael Jordan, Nick Saban, Kobe Bryant. Um, uh, there's a lot of people who I just gravitate towards because of the level of excellence and greatness that they display. And of course, I'm not playing professional sports, right? We're serving chicken, but that doesn't mean that you can't be great at that. You guys are former Chick-fil-A guys. I'm gathering you understand the amount of data and the indirect competitiveness that exists within the organization. So yeah, we can be good, and be good and I guess I don't want to say mediocre. I don't want to put goodness and mediocrity in the same sentence per se. But when you enter, if there's an opportunity for us to be great, I would rather us pursue that than just being good. Not to talk too much about our business, but I like just the fact that, hey, we're in the top 20% in this, and we're in the top 10% in that, and we're in the top. And I don't believe we achieve these metrics in the way that we do by just being good. The expect again. I led our conversation with a quote from Truett that says, perfection is the expectation, and will tolerate excellence. That to me is synonymous to greatness, and so that's what my natural inclination is to gravitate towards being great. Great at whatever it is. I want to be great at selling chicken. I want to be great at developing people. I just don't want to be good. So I'm sorry. That one was a little easier to answer. That one had less tension. That one for me on a personal level, I knew exactly where I wanted to go with
You're
that
like,
one.
boom, man. Kobe, Nick Saban. You came firing. Brad had no idea who those people were, but I was
I'm a
tracking. Brad's not a huge sports guy. And
No,
I was like,
I love
yeah,
tennis. I love tennis. I'm totally
we're
tracking.
talking. Yeah, wrong sport, Brad. You couldn't even name who
Just
the greatest tennis player of all
Well,
time is, I guess.
Roger Federer. He's awesome.
Yeah,
Serena.
Djokovic. Ooh,
Yeah, Novak. Yeah, they're all. I mean, I just look. I don't watch the sport, but when you start talking about people, Grand Slams and major titles, like those names jump off the page, and there's a
yeah.
certain level of commonality that exists between all of those people, like the sacrifice, the commitment, the discipline, all those things pour into being great. Sorry, I got a little
Yeah.
wordy.
No, man, it's
we love
good.
it.
It's
All
good.
right, all right. Clicking right along here for our slow burn. See, this is why we call it slow burn, Alex. We take our time through this rapid fire.
Yes,
And
sir.
culture or productivity? Culture or productivity? What's more important?
Culture. Now, that might seemingly go against some of the other answers that I gave earlier, but I feel like, again, when you're trying to create an environment where people can be great, I think you have to have the right culture in order for people to want to perform at their best. When you talk about a culture of excellence, a culture of treating people the right way, the culture, just, and you guys know, our tenure or our mix of employment from a Chick-fil-A standpoint, when you're talking about and to put a pin in this, our workspaces are the most multi-generational than they ever been. So creating a culture to where the 16-year-old can work with the 30-year-old and can work with the 40 and 50-year-old all on the same shift. Those 36 people just have different levels of experience, different level of background. And I think it's important for us to create a culture that's accepting to all of those individuals and for all those people to thrive. So I would pick culture over productivity. I think when you have a great culture where people want to give 110% just rather than giving 70, you will organically be more productive if the culture's right.
Good word. All right, last one here, recovery or performance?
Performance. Even though, and I guess on a personal level, I've never done the greatest of job of the recovery part. I'm always trying to pursue what's next. And maybe some of the results that I've generated in my career have been diluted, but I don't know that. I feel like we've performed at a very high level in everything that we've tried to do, especially from a Chick-fil-A standpoint. Even though I think we're relatively in our infancy still with the pivot experience, I still think that we're on the right track to be great. So I'm looking at performance. Everything that I look at from a metric standpoint speaks to performance. How well are we performing? How well are we doing? I think that kind of resonates with the being and doing question that you guys asked me earlier. So yeah, doing what to me coincides with performance. Yeah, so I take performance.
It's good stuff, man. It's
Good
good
work, man.
stuff. I like it. I like it. You're performing well right now, stepping up to the plate. 392 points. That's our highest score ever. We don't have to boot you off the podcast. We keep worrying that somebody's not going to pass the test here, but you passed. You did well, man. You did well.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So, daily leader, man, we really focus on leadership. You've got such a great perspective that we're already kind of teasing out through this game a little bit. Incredible experience in the restaurant and running your own business. Like, I want to know for you, what is leadership? How do you define that?
Well, I'll have to cheat a little bit and borrow from John Maxwell's definition of leadership and his definition of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so I remember where I was at when I first was exposed to that definition, because previous to that you have these lofty thoughts about what a leader is or isn't. But when I heard John Maxwell say that and to me activated the thought that everybody's a leader, right? Whether you have a title, whether you hold a position in the company, when you wake up every day, if you're blessed with the opportunity for your feet to hit the ground, the manner in which you influence people it illustrates what your leadership is. And so you can influence people to do things positively, you can influence people to be negative, and I'm of the belief that's not much neutral. There's really no neutral. Is either you're helping people go forward or you helping people go backwards, even in your inactivity. And if you see moments where you could say a good word and you don't, that has a negative influence on the situation, so I don't think there's neutrality there. And so I would say leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less.
And that's good. That's good. There's one thing that we haven't talked about a ton on this show actually so far is just everybody's a leader. It's just to what capacity and which direction, right? And
Hmm.
I think you just said it well. There is no neutral. We used to football practice. I remember my coach always being like, "You're either getting better or you're getting worse today, man. There's no there's no third direction." So in your leadership, like how do you tease that out of people? How do you help them kind of see that and lead them? Are there things that you do to help people with that?
I think from an organizational standpoint, say if we're talking Chick-fil-A, I think the number one thing going back to our slow burn was culture, right? And vision. If if my job primarily is to ensure that we have an environment conducive to people, number one, people wanting to be there, and if that's step one, if you're in an environment where you want to be, then at that point we're in a place to help you be the best version of yourself, because the attitude is there that we need, that needs to be there to engage in that capacity. And so for me, and it goes back to, again, this slow burn is awesome because I think it's going to be thematic throughout our entire conversation. But the culture then creates the opportunity to create relationships. I don't remember who said this, but there's a phrase that says, "No one remembers what you say, but they remember how you make them feel." And so
Mm,
we create a culture where we create relationships, and people's minds are open to listening to you tell them that, hey, you're a leader. Most people, at least in my line of employment, do not have that lens or that thought about themselves. A lot of times we get a lot of people, either it's their first job or they're trying to find something, of course, to help their families financially. And then they just look at it as, I'm just doing tasks to get to an end.
mm,
My job is to help them realize through relationship, through culture, that, hey, you're much more than just a number clocking in, getting a check. You add value. I think I was listening to Coach K one time, former head coach of Duke, and I got a lot of sports references. I mean, that sports business kind of
bring it,
run
baby.
hand in hand to me. But
Blue
Coach
Devils.
K was talking about Duke basketball, and he said everybody that touches the organization is a partner in helping us win. So
Mm,
when we win a national championship, it's just not the guys on the floor. It's not just the guys that's sitting on the sidelines from a coaching staff standpoint. It's the water boy. It's the person who opened the door to the gym to let the guys in for practice. Everybody who is a part of the organization and has value. So to answer your question, how I tease that out of people is that I let them know that they're valuable. I think that's not enough of that in our world. There's so many things going on. How many times do you tell people that are around you, or at least in your employ, that they present value? Just, if they're in the dining room, if they're taking orders, if they're making drinks, like, all of it contributes to our ability to do business. I think
mm,
Starbucks, and I don't quote me on this, I just kind of think I hear this on a peripheral, but I hear a lot of Starbucks employees refer to themselves as partners. Like, they're just not team members. They're just not, so just the idea of being a part of something and having stake in something much larger than just, I got the interview, I got the job. You tell me what to do. No, your input is valuable. How you think about things is valuable. Particularly as I get older and get more disconnected to that younger demographic,
mhm.
really listening to how they think, what are their priorities, and so I'm sorry, there might be a long-winded answer, but that's, to me, how I tease out their influence, by making sure that they understand that what they do is valuable and who they
Yeah.
are is valuable to what we do.
And I think that is so important. I was at I forget what it's called, some leadership experience years and years ago. It was put on by Willow Creek Church, big global thing, and it was
Summit.
I think it was what Summit. There it is. That's the one,
Yeah.
Brad. And I think it was Hybels sharing a story at that point about how somebody on a assessment for their team shared that they felt more like a grunt, like nobody really needed them, like they weren't a valuable part of the team. And I remember him sharing that just kind of broke his heart. And I'm like, man, we need more of that, where whoever it is that is on the team if they don't feel like they're part of the team, they should break our heart. Like they are contributing, like you said. Like just because you're the water boy does not mean that you didn't contribute to the 2015 national championship for the Duke basketball team. Like you contributed, man. So I think that that's really significant.
And just if I can add to it, I went to the home office, Chick-fil-A home office in Atlanta years ago, and they took us on a tour. And you go to the upper level where Dan Cathy's office is and Truett Cathy's office is. They have a lot of like trinkets and mementos. And one
Yeah.
thing, they had a pot like that was cleaned by an employee, a dishwasher at one of the restaurants. And apparently this person like scrub that pot. I mean, you know how dishes can get in the restaurant. They're covered with black stuff, just cooked on items. This person had scrubbed it down to it's stainless steel and it looked new. And they kept that as a reminder and a testament to that person's hard work. Like
Mm,
that person was just doing their job. One person can look at that way, but we saw that valuable enough to say you took that level of commitment to that. Dishwashing. Usually you look at that as quote unquote lower work, grunt work, as that individual may have felt. But to me that was a small sign of like, hey, value the stuff that people do, especially when they're going the extra mile. Like,
mm.
pay attention to that, acknowledge it. So sorry.
No, that's good, man. That's
It's
great. I
good.
mean, Brad and I talked about that at the restaurant all the time when we worked together. Was like, hey, never only be willing to ask people to do things that you would be willing to do yourself, right? That shows that you value it. And I know I think that there's so much importance of who's ever in charge in leadership just going, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to wash the dishes. Or I'm going to take out the trash. It seems like in some ways, hey, you could be doing something more productive. But I would say from a cultural standpoint, which you said, hey, culture, productivity, right? We're going to choose culture. There's nothing better than somebody who's humble and remembers that person and that particular task being super important and fundamental in your business. So I think that's a great tangent, man. I appreciate you bringing that home. That's really
Yeah.
good. Brad, I cut you
There's a
off.
Dale, no, you didn't. There was a Dale, no, an Andrew Carnegie quote that a mentor of mine posted, and it said that, no man will make a great business who wants to do it all himself, uh, or to get all of the credit doing it. And I think that when it comes to how we steward other people's influence, that is just a really good idea. That it's not about doing it all yourself or about getting all the credit for what gets done. It's about being able to leverage the talents, the gifts, the skills of other people and actually give them the opportunity to engage in shared ownership,
Hmm.
in accountability for what they produce. And, you know, I think you've used the word excellence 4 or 5 times in the last 32 and a half minutes, Alex. And it's a testament to not only the culture that you're in, the culture you're creating, and the way that you're serving your clients through the pivot experience. You know, influence well stewarded begets excellence and a culture of excellence. So I love the place that this conversation has gone and how important it is for understanding what leadership is and how it works.
Mm,
I have a question before we kind of move on to the next topic, which would just be if there's a story or there's an individual that comes to mind, whether it's been a team member that's worked for you or a client kind of out in the wild of the market, where you've seen them really understand what it means to have influence and how that changed their trajectory, whether that whether that was for the good or the bad.
Uh, well, yeah. So, I mean, there's a few, but the one of the more recent ones, and this person has some duality here. I work with him. He also is a client of ours that's working with a separate coach. He's going through LDP right now. Transparently, what's today? He just had his third interview yesterday or day before yesterday. Crushed it. He's going on to the fourth,
Awesome.
the last and final interview to get into LDP, which for the audience, leadership development program. Chick-fil-A has a pipeline, not a pipeline program, but a development program to help you become an operator. And his journey in pursuing this may have happened about 2 years ago. We were sitting in the car one day, and he's at the time he was 24, 25, and we were passing out scholarships for Chick-fil-A, right? You know, the annual scholarship that Chick-fil-A gives. Me and him, we took the cow, and we were surprising people who got it. They didn't know they got it, so we was going to their homes. We had already coordinated with their families that we were coming, but they didn't know we were coming, so we was popping up on them to let them know they got the scholarship. So we was in the car in transit and doing that. I said, well, what are you going to do with your, what are you looking to do long term? And he said, "Man, I don't know. I've been thinking about this, I'm thinking about that." And I said, "Why haven't you decided to go through LDP?" He said, "Me?" He didn't think that he had the level of leadership. He didn't think when we think about the operator, we think about, that's the pinnacle in our workplace, right? And so he didn't believe that he had that level of influence to be able to do that. And now he's owned that. He's realizing his authority, and he's exercising that authority and influence in the restaurant, and is paying dividends because he's, from what I can understand and the feedback that we've gotten from other people, he's kind of breezing through these interviews. I know he's doing work with Giovanna. She works with she's a coach here, and she really specializes in helping people get form what their story is, understand who they are, so they can articulate it in their interview form. And
That's
it's
great.
been really neat to see him blossom. And I think it all stemmed from him understanding the level of influence he has and what he can do on the team, and then transforming that thought to say, hey, I could influence a restaurant by being the operator to create these opportunities of employment, to create this culture, to create these relationships, to create this vision, to be able to continue to exercise my influence. And so that would be one of the more recent examples I would have to be able to see. And the guy's been working with us since he was 17 or 18, senior year in high school. So just see that development. I remember candidly just moments in his young leadership of how he would question certain things or not understand why we did certain things, or really hold himself back from other people. Now he's an open book. He's understanding I always try to tell our guys, like, you ought to be a medium for information. As soon as you learn something, you learn it, you understand it, you synthesize it in your brain how we use it, you ought to be giving it to somebody else. You shouldn't be retaining or gatekeeping
Let's
that
go.
information. And so
That's right.
seeing him take that on, from where he was to where he is now, I think is a beautiful illustration of what the question was.
Alex, why is hospitality such a rich environment for leadership development? Why is that situation and context so ripe for opportunity to develop emerging leaders?
I guess okay, I'm gonna answer this question and then maybe a few components, but I think the simplest thing with the simplest piece of it is this is the most this level of employment has the lowest barrier of entry, right? And so
Hmm.
your demographics of people to work with is really wide, and most of the time you're getting people. And hopefully this doesn't come across as offensive, but they're not the most refined when they come to work in this environment. So you get the opportunity to I like to equate like leadership development as a person who works with clay and makes pots. I don't know the technical term for that, but you start out with a mound of clay, and you see that guy have the foot pedal, and he's pedaling it, and he's just molding it, right? He's just shaping it into what or he or her, sorry, would like for it to be. And I think that in the hospitality environment, that's where you get the most mounds of unformed clay. And you look at those individuals, and then if you're approaching it with everybody has influence, everybody has
Hmm.
leadership,
Hmm.
every mound of clay has the potential to be a beautiful a piece of art, that can sit in the corner and a draw and attract value. You just have to have the mindset to be able to do it. Now, the hard part becomes having to have the understanding and the discernment to be able to work with people who have different beliefs, have different backgrounds, have different economic situations. As you guys know, working in the restaurant, you might have a family who comes from um, uh, lower class, lower middle, upper middle. You get, particularly at Chick-fil-A, you get the full run of
Totally.
of people who have different goals. Even so, you might get somebody who quit their engineering job to come work for you because they want to become an operator. So you're dealing with just so many different people. And so to your question, why is this environment so rich? It's because you're trying to harmonize all those different backgrounds and to get them to get into alignment for one particular thing. So that's the excitement for me. I love the for me in particular to be able to talk to a kid who may not have the strongest background at home, in one conversation, to be able to talk to. I have the luxury of working with people. I mean, might have like 6 or 7 people who have their bachelor's degrees on staff, and to be able to have that level of conversation with individuals. So like, I think it's a breeding ground for growth, especially when you get all these different people together with all these different outlooks, and you have the opportunity to mold them into the direction that you would like for them to go in.
That's so good. I think from a tactical standpoint, one of the reasons why it's such a ripe environment is also just the transactions, just the volume. You've got someone different coming up to your register during peak every minute, 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And just the volume of being a young person or, an English second language, and just the volume of practice that you get in those transactions, it exposes you to so many different scenarios so quickly. And this is retail, this is restaurant, this is hotel and other hospitality and leisure environments. That kind of requirement to be always on, presenting, putting forth great questions, great answers, familiarity with the menu, massive transaction volume. I just think it's healthy. It's healthy for people to be in those environments and to have to demand that kind of performance out of themselves. So I think that when you couple it with what you're saying, this massive diversity in, race, gender, socioeconomic background, all of these things creates this really cool environment for someone such as yourself to say, hey, I'm going to turn this into a leadership development opportunity for all these people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I said, particularly at Chick-fil-A, I know you said this is applicable everywhere, but it is. But at Chick-fil-A, you guys know we might do double, triple the amount of work that a similar competitor might do. So to be able to create an environment to where people want to be there, want to do the work, I think speaks to just how well us as an organization care about developing leaders that want to help other people, exist in that environment.
Yeah, and to your point, this is Chick-fil-A just released some of their numbers, and I think it was average freestanding restaurant unit volume is over $9 million annually for the first time, which is probably like, I'm guessing that's probably about 500,600,000 transactions over the course of that $9 million, which is that equates to at least 2,500 plus or minus a day. So just to give people kind of the math on what that looks like when we're talking about volume, we're talking about 2,500, people coming through a unit on any given day. So for that young employee, might interact with, 100 different orders over the course of their shift, which I just think is such great development. Taylor, I didn't mean to interrupt you, man. What were you going to
No,
add
you're
there?
good. No, that's it. And just you think of all the reps,
That's
like all
right.
the reps and opportunity. Like if you want to talk about opportunity to get better or worse and not be able to stay neutral, you are faced all the time with that, right? Somebody's in your face. There's another car in the drive-thru. Somebody else is coming through. There's in the restaurant. There's constant fires that you're putting out. So it actually requires you to operate as a youngster or however old you are coming into the business, right? At a very high level at a high percentage of the time. So that will do one of two things, right? You're gonna burn out and you're not gonna be able to pull it off, or that could create, man, something really special, which sounds like that's what happened in your case, with your buddy that's in the LDP program. It's like, man, you go through that You go through that. You go through the, okay, I got to open up the restaurant. I got to be there at 4 a.m., to do end of month, or I've got to, be there at 5 a.m. to open, or I got to stay till 1 a.m. depending on when we close, or whatever it is. And you put in those reps day after day after day after day, it will force that out of you if you allow it, or it'll just spit you up and chew you out. Because there are plenty of people that get in there and they're like, man, this is
Yeah.
not for me, man.
Well,
So
and just to add to that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just to add
right.
to that, like Brad, you mentioned average volume of $9 million, so that's one figure. There's so many other numbers that feed into that, and then
That's
having
right.
the autonomy and the ability to show someone who's 17, 18 years old a side of business that they may never get exposure to at their level of employment. It really accelerates their thinking, like, wow, wait a minute, we're doing
That's right.
what, we're
Right.
doing, we're doing close to 3,000 transactions a day, and then how does that impact you, and how could that impact your family in the future? Like, there's I get excited, when a team member gets to a certain level of buy-in, and we get to talk numbers. We did one earlier about results and relationships. I usually just naturally gravitate towards numbers. I have a maxim. One of my maxims that I live by is men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Whenever when we're in business meetings and people try to give me the emotional side of things, I'm like, well, so let's talk about the numbers. But anyway, I love to see, like, you can see the gears turning in a young person's mind when you start talking to them about sales averages, projections for the month, labor. Do you know just how much the light bill is? Just how much the water bill is, and just starting to expose them to a whole different level of thought. You really get to see, like, they start to understand their level of influence is just much more than what that sandwich is.
Mm.
They are really a part of something big, and I get a joy out of showing people, really young people, that.
That's great. And part of that is, look, people will step up to whatever level we challenge and believe them that they can. Right. And I think typically with young people, we don't necessarily hold that bar very high, nor give them too much, because, we write whatever stories we want about them. And they're not going to be able to handle this level of responsibility, which is just funny because actually, if you go back further in our history, people took on more responsibility at a younger age than we typically do right now, even though society has, you know, significantly, right, increased in terms of the way that we think and our businesses and all these kind of things. So what's really cool that you're doing, Alex, is you're going, hey, let me show you, let me show you kind of the complexities of this situation. Let me believe in you to the point where I go, you can do this. Like, do you want to do this? Can I equip, encourage, and empower you to see, like, man, here's a future for you. Here's a future for you, and not limited based on your age, right? I mean, we see this in Chick-fil-A. There's a lot of young operators out there that you're going, what? You're an operator of a
Yeah.
store? Like, that's pretty. You run a how many $1 million business, right? Or even young entrepreneurs that get out there, with Zuckerberg. It's like, hey, I'm, 17 and a half and I'm running Facebook. But if somebody can believe in them to that point and give them the means to go, that person believed in me, they challenged me, they showed me, they equipped me. Like, that's really cool, man. So I love hearing kind of your passion for younger people and inspiring them. That's cool. Tell me what you think about the hospitality industry and what, like, other industries might be able to learn from, like, leadership in the hospitality industry.
Well, this is a good question. So I did say that I started my career at 14. So I really didn't have much of a frame of reference of any other employment. And so I have the opportunity to serve on a couple of boards. More specifically, and I don't want to go into detail on this, but I served on the local school board. I was appointed by the TEA, which is the Texas Education Agency, to serve as a manager on our local school board. And so that was like the beginning of me seeing the
Mm,
difference in culture in a different environment.
that's right.
And I think that in the hospitality industry, it's all about serving people. for us on both sides of the counter, right? How well can we serve our customers? What type of experience can we give them? And then what kind of culture can we create for the people that we work with? Can we show them that we can live up to our mission of being the world's most caring company? And I think that if more industries outside of the hospitality industry borrowed some of those values and those thoughts, they would be a whole lot better. Like
That's good.
also serve on the executive board for Junior Achievement. So there's a lot of people in my area. Oil and gas is a big industry, and so there's a lot of plants and refineries that I get a chance to work with the managers in those industries, engineers and stuff like that. And so their mindset around I'm like how they go about their culture is just totally different than
Mm.
the way we operate. And I would think that, like, man, not to knock the business model. Obviously, those industries are doing very, very well for what they do. But I think that if they just prioritized people the way that the hospitality industry, when done well, does, I think we will create more pleasant workplaces. And I think that that would flow into our communities in terms of how we treat people. When we're in Walmart or we're in Target together, we're not walking around, most of us aren't, at least, with our badges of where we work. So we're at our most basic level of interaction when we're in these public places. And a lot of times what we do at work, unfortunately, we carry that. We carry that from place
Mhm.
to place, good and bad. I would like to believe that through 20 years of Chick-fil-A, the my pleasure isn't exclusive to the four walls of the restaurant. It's something that I kind of bring with me everywhere. And so I think the same is true to poor culture habits. They probably find themselves, if you work in a place that has a toxic culture for long enough, those habits will, hopefully not, but they will follow you in other places. And so if other entities, and I hope I'm answering this question well,
That's
if
great.
Keep going.
other entities in that are non hospitality focused, like in that industry, take that thought of, let's treat everybody well.
Hmm.
Let's I hear about corporate cultures that cutthroat. It's Darwinism at its finest, right? Survival of the fittest, and I just kind of that mindset. I'm like, well, I get it. Maybe in a short term success, you'll find it, but in terms of long term sustainable,
Hmm.
a good reputation. Truett Cathy says, it's a Bible verse that he takes this from, but man, I'm messing it up. A man's name is what he has. You make it. Make sure it's good. And I think that when you think about other industries, like when you hear the name of your company, what do people think about? Do they
Mm.
think about the good that you do? Do they think about the great things that your company represents, or do they remember how my dad used to work for that company, and every day he came home, he was stressed out. He didn't like his job. He didn't, my uncle, my aunt, my cousin, I have my best friend's parents. It's just if more people took on the mindset of wanting to treat people well, not only the customer but the people that work for them, and I think that's what the hospitality industry is.
Mm.
I think more industries will be better.
Oh man,
Uh,
you can preach on that all day. I think that that's great. I mean, Brad and I would leverage probably that way anyways, right? But if you take care of your people, your profits will take care of themselves. So that's
Mhm.
internally and externally, right? If I'm thinking about, hey, what would be best for my team? What would be best for my customers or my guests or my clients? I think that will net out. Like that is the business game in itself. What is good for those people? Because you said it, like, hey, if my goal at the end of the day is to make money, there's a lot of ways that I can do that to burn bridges that are going to be fantastic in the short run, but they may not net out in the long run. So I think that is a great thing that the hospitality industry can teach so many other companies. Man, that's
For
that's
sure.
awesome. Yeah.
Agreed. Well, let's we're bumping up on our hour here. Taylor and I have a couple little lighthearted things we want to kind of chat through. So this first is, what are you currently reading right now? What's kind of an open book, either in your Audible or on your bookshelf, that you're excited about, that you think our listeners should go check out?
So we just finished, when I say we, me and Giovanna, we just finished Greg Groeschel's latest book, Think Ahead, basically talking about 7 predeterminations that you should make to be an effective leader. And I guess a few things that jumped off the page in reading that, and it kind of goes back to everything we've been talking about. Is one of the decisions is I will be an influencer, making the decision before your day gets started that you're going to influence people to do the right thing, and you're going to use your influence to help change the trajectory of the lives of the people that you have to serve. And so I think that that's a book that we just finished, and we're about to get ready to read Mark Miller and Randy Gravitt's latest book, Uncommon Greatness. And so I think that book is over something that is very familiar to the Chick-fil-A fabric of leadership, but I'm excited to always get refreshed on the core leadership principles that make this company as great as it is.
That's really good. When you think about the books and the people, right? The people that we meet, the books that we read that have had the greatest influence on you, give us a book and a person who has been most influential in your own leadership development, Alex.
So I'm gonna answer that question a few ways, if that's okay.
Come on, man.
I'm gonna give. I don't want to say cliche, but I'm going to give the Bible. That might be. I don't know,
That's good.
but there's a few things that I mean.
For better or worse, for better or worse, that one takes the.
Well, I mean specifically to say that's the first leadership book that, in my opinion, that we know of, right? One of the things that I think was a foundation to my drive is Philippians 4:13, and that's I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me, right? Um, Also Colossians 3:23, where it says, the work that you do is not unto man, but it's unto God. So that kind of really, really checks me in the tone of work that I do. I also, one of my maxims, there, I don't know the verse, so forgive me for that. But it basically says all things work for the good for those who love the Lord, and that word "all" that to me is good, bad, ugly, great. It all is there for your good. So that's that perspective. There's a book written by Dr. Eric Thomas. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he's a motivational speaker called UOU. I'm looking at it right now. It's across the room. But that book really talks about his journey from being homeless to working in a church to becoming now a New York bestseller, a best-selling author. He got his doctorate degree. And there's a couple of things that he talked about in the book, but one in particular is about getting into miracle territory. And how he defines this is that if there's something that you want to do, for me, being honest, I see myself in the next 10 years keynoting, at a high level, being a keynote speaker. And now I've got a lot of work to do. I'm working on, polishing my stuff in that area. But he was like, if there's something that you want to do, get yourself in the environment in which those things are happening. So what if you're not on the program? If they got a spot to, they need somebody to help sweep the floors after the event, you go do that and put yourself in a position to be around the people, to create the relationships, to get to where you want to get to. So that's something that really stuck out to me in that book. And I really like James Clear's Atomic Habits because it really breaks down some of the science behind shaping discipline. And if we're going to pursue greatness, that was my slow burn, we got to have discipline. So I'm sorry that was probably a meatier answer than you guys would like, but that's the three influences that I will, three influences that I would roll with.
Dude, you're keynoting well, man. You're bringing it. You got great content, great delivery. So I love all those things, man. The Bible I think is fantastic. We don't get that answer often, and it is interesting because I would tend to agree that's probably the first leadership book that's ever written. And when you were talking about, man, hey, just be in the arena and around it, I was thinking of, is it Mike McDaniels, the coach of the Miami Dolphins, who started off as the Denver Broncos ball boy and is now the coach of the Miami Dolphins. Like,
staying in Miami, I think Eric Spoelstra was like he was the AV guy for the Miami Heat. Now, multiple championships, probably one of
Heat
the more.
culture.
So there's a lot of stories like that speaks to, hey, where did you start there, and where it got you to. So I love that.
Yeah, that's good, man. No, that was a great answer. Well, gentlemen, this has been a blast, man. We got to have you back on, Alex. I appreciate your time. This is super insightful. I feel like I learned a ton. Yeah, I'm just really grateful, man.
No, I appreciate it. It didn't. It did. I'll be honest with you. It doesn't feel like an hour. I'm looking at the time. I was like, man. I looked up. I was like, we've been talking for 40 minutes. It doesn't even feel like, But when we're talking about leadership, I'm passionate about it. So the time flies.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're being
Alex, how do if people want to learn more about the Pivot experience, if they want to maybe even potentially become a client, if they want to engage with you, hire you to come speak as you polish these keynote skills, you're going to need lots of opportunities to get reps in. How do they contact you? Let our listeners know where you're at.
So, number one, you can visit our website. It's www.tpenow.com. That's www.tpenow.com. We're also on LinkedIn, Brad. That's how you and I got acquainted. And so you can go Alexandru Seale on LinkedIn. We also have a company page there, the Pivot Experience. There, YouTube, Instagram, at TPE Now is the handles. And so Facebook, the Pivot Experience. So we try to canvas most of them, the social platforms. I'm getting a little older. Some of that stuff is kind of getting a little fuzzy for me, but I'm trying, like TikTok. I'm really trying to get there. It's not sticking, but I'm trying. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Dude, I
awesome.
remember when they came out with Snapchat, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try the Snapchat thing. And it didn't have any buttons at that time. It was all swipes. And I just like deleted it the same, like within like half an hour. I was like, no, I've aged out. I have
Same.
no business being on
Yeah,
Snapchat.
not good. Not good.
Same.
Yeah, I spent 10 years off of social media trying to get back in the game now. It's a different world, man. People are like,
Yeah.
there's stories on Instagram. Less people use Facebook. Like when I was on social like 10 years ago, it was like Facebook was the place, Instagram was secondary. You were on Twitter a lot.
Man, I
There
just
was
miss
no TikTok.
MySpace. I miss
Oh
Tom
yeah.
from MySpace. What
Come
happened
on.
to Tom? Where'd Tom go? Where are they now?
I don't know. I don't know, man. All those best friends on MySpace, they're all gone. Top 5, whatever it was. I never had one, but a lot of stories. So,
All
well,
right.
this has been
Thanks,
fun.
guys.
Yeah. Hey, Daily Leader people, we will see you again next week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and check out all of Alex's information in our show notes.